Welcome to another great O'Reilly webcast. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Yasmina Greco and I'll be your host for today's event. Folks, today we have Jonathan Stark with us and he is going to talk to you about the Glanceable web, extending web apps to smartwatches. Jonathan is a mobile strategy consultant who helps CEOs transition their business to mobile. Jonathan is the author of 3 books on mobile and web development, most notably O'Reilly's Building iPhone Apps with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which is available in 7 languages. His Jonathan's Card experiment made international headlines by combining mobile payments with social giving to create a pay-it-forward coffee movement at Starbucks locations all over the U.S. I'll turn the program over to Jonathan in just a moment, but first I'd like to go over a little housekeeping to help you get the most out of today's webcast. You'll want to start by opening your group chat widget if you haven't already done so. This is what we will use today to communicate and interact with and where you can submit your questions for Jonathan. We find that our audience usually has a lot of good knowledge to share, so we encourage you to chat freely during the event. However, if you have questions for Jonathan, please preface them with a capital letter Q so we know that they're for him and we can make sure we see it for Q&A. You can also open, move, and resize any of the other widgets. If you'd like to tweet from the Twitter widget today, you might need to give it permission to access your account. The Twitter widget will automatically append the event's hashtag to your tweet so you don't have to. And today, folks, our hashtag is WebApps, all one word. If you have any trouble with the webcast, please take a look at your help widget. If you continue to have trouble, just post it in the group chat and one of our staff will help you right away. If you have choppy audio or stalled visuals, please try refreshing your window. And remember, the best thing you can do for a good audio stream is close any apps that could interfere. People always ask, so we'd like you to know we are recording today's webcast and we will have the archive ready usually within 48 hours. And folks, at this time it is my pleasure to turn the program over to Jonathan for his presentation. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Yaz. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here to talk about extending web apps to smartwatches. As I see it, the next frontier in mobile computing is the watch. The mobile phone, I feel like, has kind of plateaued as a form factor and a bundle of functions. And we're not going to see a ton of innovation there. I know the iPhone 6 is about to launch, and maybe I'll eat my words, but I feel like the smartphone has kind of plateaued, and we're not going to see massive innovations there. I feel like the innovations are going to be in second screen experiences and wearables. So I think as web developers and designers, we need to start thinking about that a little bit early, and that's the goal for today, to start thinking about what are the unique constraints of a watch, and then I'll go through some slides around that, and then after that I'm going to demonstrate how to actually build a watch app for the Pebble smartwatch. Okay. So I'm going to switch over to screen sharing to show you these slides and demos. Sometimes it takes a second. Looks like it popped right in, so I'm sure Yaz will jump in if no one can see. All right. Great. So I'm going to grab slides. Hopefully you can see my first slide. It says the Glanceable web.
We can see it.
Fab. Great, thanks. Okay, so why should we care about this, right? There's not really a smartwatch market at this point. There's a lot of watches coming out. We've got a half a dozen or so of them. I've been testing them for a couple of years. And only recently have they gotten to the point where they're actually useful and not just a complete novelty. But still, you don't see people wearing them around all that much. That said, I do believe that the smartwatch market is going to be big, maybe not huge, but I think it'll be bigger than say, a Fitbit type of fitness tracker market. It won't be as big as smartphones because I think it's reasonable to assume that they'll require some kind of tethering, Bluetooth tethering to a device for their internet connectivity. But I think it's going to be pretty big, certainly worth worrying about. Another thing that I think is important about smartwatches is that it provides differentiation for your other apps, whether they're native mobile apps, native desktop apps, web apps on mobile or desktop. It doesn't matter. When you think about the size of the potential market, it'll be a big differentiator for your application to also have a smartwatch component. So right now there are, if we just talk about mobile, there are, at last report, roughly 1.2 million apps in iTunes and roughly 1.3 million in Google Play. And less than 0.02% of those have at least a Pebble companion smartwatch. So there's like under 300 apps in Google Play that have a Pebble smartwatch companion. We're going to talk about Pebble mostly today, but that's not a lot of competition. There are not a lot of Pebble-enabled Android apps, just to pick one example, and you can really differentiate your Android app, for example, from the competition by having a companion app for Pebble, and that's Pebble sold like 400,000 watches to date, and those are old numbers. It's probably closer to 500,000 watches at this point. So if 500,000 users is a big market to you, then it's certainly worth thinking about. The other big thing is that it's pretty easy. I'm going to show you today in under 60 minutes how to create a simple application and get it installed on a watch. And actually it'd probably take more like 20 minutes. So I think that will hopefully convince you that there's really not that high a barrier to entry. If you are a web developer, you can use your JavaScript skills to just go to town without any IDE install, SDK install, nothing. You just go in a web browser and start coding. It's pretty easy to get started. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you that it's worth thinking about this. Obviously, you're on the webinar, so you must be. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but there are a couple of things I think that you need to get your head around when you're thinking about designing for smartwatches. And it's really familiar to me because I just went through, and probably like most of you, just went through this transition from desktop to mobile or laptops to mobile. And I think people found out pretty quickly that shoehorning desktop UX paradigms into a phone just didn't work. It was a completely different experience. It was a touch screen. You're interacting directly with content. There wasn't a lot of real estate, retina, spotty connection. There's a million reasons why designing for a phone is fundamentally different than designing for the desktop. And guess what? Shoehorning phone apps into a watch doesn't work either. You need to really rethink the app design for smartwatches. And it's a very familiar feeling from the sort of step down from laptop to phone and then from phone to watch. It's a familiar feeling. You'll find yourself doing a lot of the same things. It's like you need to really hyper-focus on the key features, and it's the same kind of advice, but you just have to do it again. It's another step change. So Android Wear was, I guess that was released this year, announced and released this year, which is Google's Android wearable platform. And right now, I think there are at least 2, maybe 3 watches available in the market, and another one was recently announced. And they have some UX Google has some UX guidelines on the Android site, and I think there are three of them are really good, sort of universal paradigms for developing for a watch. They have some other ones that are specific to Android Wear that I left out. But the first one, which is huge, is do one thing really fast. And according to Google, they say if it takes more than 5 seconds to use your app, it's not focused enough. And the issue is that if it takes longer than 5 seconds, the person's probably going to pull out their smartphone, which they certainly also have. if the watch is basically tethered to a phone over Bluetooth in order to have internet connectivity, they definitely have a phone nearby. So if the task or thing that they're trying to accomplish or piece of information they're trying to view takes more than, I would even say 5 seconds is kind of long. If it's pushing up against 5 seconds, you probably need to optimize or focus your app down to something a little bit more specific. The next Android Wear guideline is to design for the corner of the eye. And this is really interesting. I've been wearing smartwatches, one kind or another, for about a year and on and off before that. And I immediately noticed when I got Android Wear, which is pretty full-featured touchscreen interface. It's kind of like a tiny phone. It's kind of like a cross between a tiny phone and the Google Glass interface. And it almost has too many features. You can almost do too many things, and you can kind of get sucked into it, which all of a sudden feels like you're sucked into a really small, lame phone. So it's interesting that they point out that when you design for something, you want to design it in such a way that the user doesn't have to look at your app very closely or for very long, because the more they have to, the more you're pulling them out of the real world, and they get that sort of glazed over, sucked into the internet type of look that you see in basically everybody with a phone in their hand. That does not work well for the watch, because you immediately are like, this is a terrible phone. The experience needs to be much more glanceable than that. Another thing is that you don't want to constantly annoy the person. So I've got a couple of quick stories about this, but they point out something really interesting, which is that the watch is constantly touching the user's skin. Not just in your pocket, it is on you. It is touching your skin almost certainly directly. And all of these watches vibrate on notifications. So if you are in a relationship that intimate, if you are buzzing as much as you're buzzing the phone, it's going to be super annoying. It will drive you crazy. Interestingly, I've also found that when I get notifications on my Android Wear watch, which has a really gorgeous, bright color screen, especially if I'm at dinner or something, people get really annoyed by it. Not just me, but other people, because the screen keeps coming on and doing things, and it's very distracting. And I've actually had 2 people ask me to turn it off while we were having dinner. So don't annoy the person wearing it, and also don't annoy the other people. So, like I said, I've been wearing these watches a lot, and I feel like I can kind of boil down those 3 principles into one golden rule, which is that watches are for knowing things, not doing things. I mean, sure, there are some limited micro tasks that do make sense on the watch, maybe a 4-square check-in, or some very small things like dismissing a phone call or changing the volume on your media playback. But as soon as you start to get more complicated, and you're like a couple of screens deep, which you can do on Android Wear, you start asking yourself, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I'm just going to pull out it would be faster and easier and more pleasing to pull out my phone and just do this than it is to be, struggling on my watch. So I think that as a general principle, that if you focus on, when you're imagining the pieces of your web app that you want to expose on the watch, think about the things that your user wants to know, more so than the things they want to do, because it's almost always easier to just pull out your phone and do data entry or anything like that on their phone. But you want to know things on your wrist. You want to just be able to quickly look, see if something's important, or make a decision and move on. I would say that Pebble has really nailed the interaction model, and the most complicated it really gets is most of the time. There's a couple of exceptions, but most of the time the level of input is kind of like a confirmation dialog, like a JavaScript confirmation dialog, where you'll get it'll ask you something like incoming phone call, cancel or accept, or Bluetooth connection, cancel or accept. You basically have 2 choices and no data entry for the most part. So I think that's really important. So when you're thinking about your application and what might be important to your users, you want to think about the pieces of information that they need to know in order to make decisions multiple times throughout the day. So I just put together a list of things that are important to me, reasons why I look at my watch repeatedly. And if you think about why watches, regular watches, not just smart watches, if you think about why they have this really prominent position in our lives, and they're strapped to our hand, basically, like to your wrist, on your skin, and they're extremely popular. I mean, like tons of people have regular watches. And I would argue that the reason that is because all throughout the day, repeatedly, you have to make decisions about what you're going to do next based on what time it is, or maybe what the date is. And it's really important or I should say, it's really annoying to pull out your phone and, wake the screen every single time you need to know what time it is. I never noticed that I was annoyed by that. I haven't really worn a watch since regular dumb phones became available in the 90s. But now that I'm back to wearing one, I realize that I pull out my phone a lot less now because I can just glance at my wrist. Like, people on average pull out their smartphones 120 times a day, I think the studies show. I probably shaved 50 of those off. I probably pulled my phone out, 75% of the amount that I used to, because a lot of the information I'm looking at my phone for, I can just get off my wrist in a fraction of the time. So the things I'm always looking at are the time and the date, of course, the weather, usually a couple times a day when I'm about to go from inside to outside, and do I need to bring a sweatshirt or something. Definitely appointments, that's really nice. I don't really drive that much, but it would be important to know, it would be great to know traffic alerts and that kind of thing if you were leaving work and there was going to be a lot of traffic. Android Wear does that really well. I'm big into calorie tracking and step counting and all that stuff, so it's nice to know, I'm late for something, I could take the elevator or I could take the stairs. I look at my wrist to see how many calories, how many steps, what my activity is at for the day, and be like, I really should take the stairs because I'm behind. So these are the kind of decisions that you're making all day long, and it's just too much. It sounds crazy to say it, but it's a little bit too much friction to have to pull your phone out every single time, especially if you have a lock screen on your phone, which you should. So that becomes a big issue. And in fact, is another benefit of the watch is that it's strapped to you, so it's less important to have it locked. And if it gets too far away from your phone, it doesn't really have any information on it anyway. So it's not as important for security, and you can just leave it on all the time. So that's real nice. So in my opinion right now, Pebble is the winner. They have struck the, in my opinion, best balance of comfort, style, simplicity, battery life, all of that stuff. It's not the best looking watch at all. It's plastic, and it's kind of like a swatch. I feel too old to be wearing one, but it keeps sucking me back. The information that it provides me at a glance is, I can't go back to checking my phone for that. It's way, way better. Battery life's insanely good. It lasts like 5 to 7 days on a single charge, and when you do have to charge it, it charges to full in 15 minutes or less. Compared to some of the other watches, they're just really, the battery life's just not there. And in my opinion, they traded battery life for flashy stuff that doesn't really belong on a watch anyway, at least until, Android Wear's V1 right now. It's going to get a lot better soon, so we will wait and see. But right now, Pebble is definitely my hands-down favorite. So that's what we're focusing on today. In addition, another reason why Pebble is my favorite is because it's easy to customize it. There are tons of apps for it. There are tons of apps for it. It works on iOS or Android, so the two main platforms, and I do switch between those phones. And there's a really good developer experience, amazing developer experience, in fact, that I'm going to demonstrate for you, that makes it easy for you to create apps that do what you want, if there isn't an app already that does what you want. And I'm going to demonstrate that specifically right now. Okay, so I have an application that is sort of I guess it's my proof of concept for building apps that run everywhere. I like to have, when I create stuff as a web developer, I want it to run on the widest possible range of devices. It's like my favorite thing about the web is that people can access your stuff from like anything pretty much. So Kilo is an application. It's a calorie tracking application. So, and I'll show it to you, but it looks like this on the phone. It's a very simple design. The goal of it is to be insanely fast and very responsive. So this is what it looks like on the desktop, where I just sort of punted with the background. I was like, I don't know what to fill up all this space with, so I just put some nice pictures in the background on really large screens. But it's super fast. It is a website. It connects to the internet. It saves all the data remotely, and I wanted to. I want let me go back there. The calorie total there, the 1430 number. That's how many calories I have left for the day at any given point in time. And I don't want to pull out my phone or open up my computer or whatever to find out that number. I want to just look at my wrist. So this is a picture of that same exact screen. Let me bounce back to it real quick. I probably should have put these on the same slide. But you've got a list of things that you've eaten, what time you ate them, the calories, and the total. And I've got that exact same information on the watch. So I'm going to show you how to build that right now. All right. Let's jump over here. All right, this is actually the live version of Kilo. This isn't a slide. You can go between days. You can see the pictures in the background refresh, and you can see if I make it smaller, you can see that it's responsive and switches to you can run this on anything. You can use this on a Firefox OS, whatever, anything. This runs everywhere. So it's a regular website. So what I did was I set up a page that was just a data feed of this information. And I'm not going to go into how to do that. I'm sure if you're a web developer, you could think of 100 ways to do that, Rails or whatever. But I wanted this information returned to me as a JSON feed. So I set up a special page at this URL, Pebble JSON2.php, and I just send in my email, and it returns my totals for the day. And it has a list of items that were on the list. So when I look at the total, I can also look at the list and say, okay, I didn't forget to put anything on there. I can see the most recent things that I ate, and there they are right there. All right, so now I've got this little JSON feed. It's super, I'm sure if you're, like I said, if you're a web developer, that's like super easy to do. The next thing I want to do is enable my phone for development. And I'm going to actually show you this webcam. So what I'm doing now on the screen is you are seeing a webcam, live webcam pointed down at my desk. And this is my Android phone. This works on iOS as well. And here's my Pebble watch. And what I'm going to do is show you in here that I've got, it's a little blurry, but you can see hopefully that this developer setting is turned on. Let's see if I can focus that a little better. And on Android, it's a little bit different on the two platforms, iOS and Android. But on Android, you can do everything within the Pebble app. And you see this developer options thing. You can sort of see I've got it checked there. And what that does is it creates this developer option in the menu. And all this does in here is tells me really it enables the app to listen for connections, and it tells me the IP address that the phone has on the LAN, on the local network. So that's my local IP. Notice the phone's not plugged into anything. And now here's my watch. That's obviously not plugged into anything. But they're tied together over Bluetooth. They're connected over Bluetooth. And I'm sorry that's so blurry, but you can see these instructions here at this URL. The iOS instructions are here. It's a little more complicated because you have to go into the Settings app, turn on developer mode there. But here's a nice clear view of it. Once you have developer mode on, you can see your IP address. And you need that when you go over to Pebble's amazing cloud-based IDE. If you're familiar at all with iOS or Android development, native development, you will know that you have to install an SDK at the very least on your machine. They're usually really big and they're usually pretty complicated. And you probably also are going to install either Android Studio or Eclipse in the case of Android, or you're going to have to install Xcode pretty much to do any iOS development. And these are very heavyweight applications that are incredibly complicated. And if you're like me, they're not very intuitive to a web developer. The whole thing is just super overwhelming. I'm not an IDE person. I'm a text editor person. So here you see cloudpebble.net/IDE. This is my settings page for my whole account. You can see there are a couple of options here. I didn't change anything, I don't think. This is the way it is by default. Notice that you can link your GitHub account to it, which is amazing because the code that I'm about to edit in here, I can connect to a GitHub repo and just push and pull back and forth either from the browser here, or if I'm doing local development and pushing to GitHub, I can pull here. So it's really, really convenient GitHub integration, so that's real nice. Now if I jump over to projects, I've got a couple that are already done in case things go horribly wrong here, but what I'm going to do is pray that the demo gods shine on me and actually create a new project. We'll call it Pebble Rocks 2. And there are a couple of different project types here. So there's the Pebble C SDK, which I'm actually going to show you some code from today if we have time, but we're not going to write any C today because I promised that we were just going to write JavaScript today. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And there's this Simply.js, which was an open source project that a big Pebble fan put together. And I guess Pebble is working with him to create a Pebble, official Pebble version of it called Pebble.js. And you can see it's in beta here, but it does work. All right, so here we are. We've basically typed in a name and selected an option from a list, and then we're going to hit Create. And this is going to switch us into the editor mode. And it just really has one file, app.js. This is your application. You can see I am a huge Sublime Text 2 fan. I live and breathe in that application. And I found that it doesn't really annoy me too much to do my coding in this editor. It's pretty good. I mean, you're not doing a ton of editing. It's going to be short files. So it's just super convenient. It's so convenient that I almost never pull open Sublime, and I just code everything right in the browser, which I think is kind of hilarious and awesome. So let me just run you through the interface real quick. It's not very complicated. You've got project-specific settings. We've got name, short name, long name. These show up in different places. You can see the microcopy tells you where they show up. Just some general default stuff. There you have that. Then you've got compilation options. And I think I'll come back to that in a sec. I'll just quickly show you the GitHub stuff. You can put the repo in, just paste it right in here. You can, it's just great. It's so simple. There's like, this is the whole page. You just save, push, pull, whatever. Very simple. But the two places where you spend most of your time are in the app.js file and in the compilation page. So now if we look at, let me make this a little smaller. Pull this over here. Try and focus that again. And what I'm going to do is go back to the My Pebble page. It shows me the applications that are in my locker in this area. This is a bunch of applications that are sort of like, that I use sometimes, that I downloaded from the store, and I've got them in this locker, but they're not actually on the watch because you can only have 8 applications on the watch. But this gives me like a quick place where I can stick all my favorites, or not my favorites, but stuff that is not currently on the watch, but I probably don't want to delete. And then the top area here is all of the apps that are installed actually on the watch. So now if you kind of watch that in the background, I didn't do anything to this file yet. Oh wait, there's one thing I do have to do. To go into settings, sorry, no, I'm in the right place. We'll do it from here. I'm going to run that. It's compiling. And yeah, so it gave me an error because I also have an iPhone and it's trying to send it to my iPhone. So let me change my, there we go. That's what I was looking for. So this is my iPhone that is connected to this IDE. On Android, you have to enter the IP address manually. That's what I was looking for a second ago. And now I am going to install and run. And watch, this is totally wireless. You might not be able to read that, but it says loading to Pebble. And boom, it just opened up on the watch. No, like no wires, no nothing, no barely any config. I basically just turned on developer mode in the Pebble app. And not only that, but it has real-time logging. Let me see if I can arrange these things a little better. So now watch this log area over here as I interact with, you can see it live logging wirelessly. 0 installs, 0 configuration. So crazy. It's so awesome. Let me go to here. It's a little hard to do this and still show you, but here's a list. I can select the second item. You can see this all logging in the background. So now let's look quickly at the code that makes this happen. It's pretty, if you know, JavaScript people will be very comfortable with this. It's very sort of node-like, very, very cool. So let's get rid of some of these comments. First, you require a couple things. I don't typically need vector, but you definitely need UI. You'll see in the next example, I'm going to include Ajax, an Ajax library that they have. And then this could like hardly be simpler. Here you use this UI library that they provide to make a new card, which is basically a window. Give it a title. You can optionally give it an icon, optionally subtitle, optionally body, and then you just show it. Boom. It shows up. And if we look back at the watch, geez, it's really hard to see. But that's that home screen. You've got the icon, you've got the Pebble.js, you've got Hello World, you've got press any button, just like it says right here. It could not be easier. So very, very nice. So now we want some event listeners. We want to. There's 4 buttons on the Pebble. In case you're not familiar with it, there's a back button. Sort of hard to see. There's a back button right here, and there's an up button, a select button, and a down button. So these controls are very. They feel very similar to the original iPods actually, with the click wheel. You're either going up and down on a list, or you're going back, or selecting an item in a list. It's pretty intuitive. So what you do here, you can. This is very jQuery-ish actually. You can see you want the main window to listen for clicks on the up button, and when you get a click on an up button, make a new window or make a menu in this case. It has sections, with items, with these details. And so if we go over to, if we look at that, that's this is the up button. There we go. And it's a little hard to see, but you got Pebble.js, that's this. It's got a little icon next to it, that's this hex icon. Can do menus, it's hard to read, but that's what it says there. And so like that's just so simple, so simple. It's like ridiculous. Okay, so you get the idea. There's a couple of other listeners. There's a select one, there's a down, and they just make different cards, different windows, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to move on to, I want to change this over to showing me the information that I want from Kilo. I want to pull in this JSON and put it on the screen. So I want to leave time for questions. I might just jump over and talk you through the code. All this will be available after the fact, by the way. I'll have GitHub repos available for this so you can play with it yourself. But this app right here, this is the entire code base for this experience right here. What I'll do is I'll run this. And then I'll pull up the phone again. You'll see it install. Oops. Oh, it did it again. It wants to go to that iPhone. There you go. And let's get the thing situated here. All right. And we'll install and run. One of the downsides of this is that I have to leave everything connected to the internet, so I'm getting actual notifications in the meantime. Installing up on the watch. So a couple of things can go wrong at this point. One thing that has happened to me is that without realizing it, I've filled up my 8 slots. I don't think I've done that. I don't think I filled it up just now. But let's cancel this. And let's go back to the home screen. Okay, great. And then let's look over here and make sure I don't have too many things. Actually, I'll actually go ahead and I'll delete the other demo here. I'll show you how to do that. You just tap on it and just completely delete it. And you can see it deleting. There we go. Now let's try this again. Give it a second to make its way through the network. Hopefully we'll find ourselves this time. All right, so let's do a little debugging real quick. Actually, let's just do this. This will be like the magic of TV and a cooking show. I'm just going to copy this stuff, go back to projects, Rocks 2. All right, and we'll save that. And check my compilation settings. I'm going to go back to here. Maybe, oh, you know what? I probably have to run it from the screen. That's probably the problem. Let's try that. Another possibility is that occasionally your IP address will change, but I don't think that's the issue. Yeah, it doesn't usually take this long, so I think I'm having demo god problems. Let's just check. I'll show you what debugging looks like. Make sure I've got the right IP address. 68.1.25. Try it one more time. Occasionally you have to toggle things on and off. The network, well, I guess the downside of it not requiring wires is sometimes it just can't do the network dance the way it wants to. All right, it doesn't want to cooperate. So what I'll do is I'll show you the code. We can talk that through rather than just watching that barber pole. And I will show you that here I'm including an AJAX library, which is just a utility library that Pebble includes in the IDE. And I've got that require UI again. And then here I set some global settings. I'll explain how to actually grab these from the user in a second, but I'm just hard coding them here to my email address and to that endpoint, which is right here. And then I create a view, or a card, I should say, that just basically has some default text. It says Kilo for Pebble in the title, and it says loading, and I make sure it's scrollable set to true because I don't know how long a list it's going to be. Then I show the card, so it shows up briefly, and then I call this get JSON function. And that runs just like an onload would, window onload, or when you put JavaScript at the bottom of a document. And when that function runs, it does this really simple AJAX thing. And so here's the cool thing. I wasn't sure how to do this, and it's so obvious that it didn't even occur to me to do this, which is we've got the original card stored in this variable, card, and I can just update the properties of it later and put in the title and the body that come in from the JSON. So title, body, boom. And I'll switch over to slides because we have a picture of it, and it shows up like that, where it's not ugly, it's not it is ugly, it's not formatted or anything, but you can do that. You can set the fonts, you can do all sorts of things, and bang, like now you have an app on your phone, on your watch. I always say phone. You have an app on your wrist now that is accessing data from the internet and can give you this glanceable information that you need access to with very low friction so that you can make decisions about your behavior throughout the day. It's really, when I take the watch off and I don't have this, I feel like it's not a comfortable feeling. It's an uncomfortable feeling. So what I'm going to do now is give you a glimpse of taking it to the next level. So this Pebble.js is beta, and some of the documentation, like all the basic docs are there. It tells you everything, how to get started. It's pretty great. There's excellent API docs and all that stuff. But I want to show you another app on my phone, because I keep saying phone, on my watch. I wanted the kilo information to be integrated not in an app, which you navigate to, like so. Let's see, I can go all the way down and say, open this app right here. And you can just leave that. I could leave the Pebble Rocks app open on my thing like that. But I actually I want this information all the way back at the top on the watch face. So I wrote, there's two types of, I don't know what to call them exactly. There's two types of things that you can write for the watch. You can write apps and you can write watch faces. And watch faces have, you might imagine, different features, and they handle buttons and interactions a little bit differently than apps. But if you want something to be at the very top level on the home screen all the time, you're going to want to write a watch face. So let me see if I can find the real Kilo watch face, and then I'll show you the code behind that. So here it is. So that's, again, it's a little tough to say, read, but it's the same data. It's the 1430 calories left, chocolate, blah, 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 the things that I ate. And I just have them in a list like that, so I can just look down at my watch. I can see the date. I can see the time. I can see how many calories I have left. And I can see the most recent few things that I logged and tell whether or not I forgot to put something in and I need to pull up my phone and enter it or not. So I want to show you the code behind that. That is here. And there's some JavaScript to this, very similar. I've got that similar get JSON call, but I did it with like raw XHR. So that's nothing really new. I've got some commenting and stuff like that. And then I've got event listeners, which I've attached. Now, a couple of these are special. So ready is what you might imagine, just a ready handler when the page loads. Then I've got on message. So what's interesting about writing a C app, which this one is it's a C-based project, written in C in this other file right here that we'll look at in a second, just briefly. But what it does is it messages back and forth between the phone and the watch. So there's actually some code that is running on the watch, where with the Pebble.js ones, the code's all running on the phone, and it's just sending a view over to the watch when you need to view it. So it's slightly different. So I wanted this to all be on the face, and I wanted it to tick and all that stuff. So on ready, it basically loads the JSON as you saw, and on this app message, when the watch asks for fresh data every so often, I think I have it set to 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, it just repulls the data. The watch will send a message to the phone, and the phone's like, oh, the watch wants something. So then the phone will call get JSON again and refresh the data. Now these other two options, show configuration and WebViewClose, are how you set up a configuration panel for the app. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is the place where you would put in the email address for the user. A little better view, hopefully. Go to my Pebble. And so when I tap on Kilo for Pebble in the Android app, such a bummer. Sorry you can't read that very well, but you can kind of see at the bottom there's a settings option, and that settings option is there because I told in the IDE I said that this is a configurable application. When you hit settings, it does something really cool. It accesses a URL that you provide from inside the phone, just like in a web view, and it asks you for some information. In this case, it's my email address, and then I can either submit or cancel, or I can actually even join the launch. This is the actual Kilo app running inside of the web app running inside of the Pebble app. So you go in here, do the settings, and this page is served from my web server, but it's communicating locally with the application. This is kind of like a mind bender. But when you submit that, what it does is calls this WebViewClose function, and it basically what you do to pass information back to this page is you just put a hash in the URL, and you can see that right here. And it gets a little weird, but it's not hard. You can see that there's not a lot of code here, and you can actually go to this page and see it. It won't do anything in the browser, but you can see I have this page hosted. It's just a regular, I use jQuery Mobile, it's just a regular jQuery Mobile page. It doesn't do anything. I could enter it wouldn't do anything. But I suppose you could see, when I submit it, you can see it calls this pebble.js://close hash, and then you hash all this information onto there. It's just URL encoded information. And that triggers the event back here, WebViewClose. So it says, oh, okay, I got to close, and yada, yada, yada. You just grab the stuff out of the hash in the URL and save it. Here I'm saving it to local storage. So next time somebody launches the settings page, I can pre-fill it with the email address that they entered the last time. So cool. I'll quickly show you the C code. If you've never looked at C, it's pretty hectic, actually. But the good news is that I didn't write 90% of this. They have tons of example files, and I just copy and pasted the whole thing and edited a couple of little things. I mean, to be frank, I'm not a C developer. I don't even know what half this stuff does, to tell you the truth. I just went through it, I followed the examples, and I followed the instructions, and was able to create a watch face without too much trouble, in a couple hours. If you're familiar with JavaScript, the syntax is very similar. It looks kind of like strongly typed JavaScript. But other than that, it's fairly straightforward. It just looks really messy because you have to actually make rectangles and put them in places, which gives you tons of fine-grained control, and it's super fast because it's C. But it just looks a little messy. So like I said earlier, I'll make all this stuff available as repos so you guys can dig through it, look at the documentation in Pebble if you really want to take it to the next step. But in the meantime, using a Pebble.js approach is a no-brainer for exposing information from your web app and extending it to the watch for your users. So I urge you to give that a try. It's super fun. All right, I'm going to switch back to slides. And that was the demo. And I'll just say thank you at this point and let you know that if anybody has questions, you're always welcome to tweet at me. I love answering questions on Twitter. And if you want links to the repos and these slides actually with presenter notes and all that stuff, just follow that link at the bottom, jonathanstark.com/subscribe, and I'll email out links to everybody next 24 hours or so. Great. So we've got 10 minutes left. I would love it if people would ask questions, and if we even have time at the end, I might ask you guys a couple questions too. So, Yaz, if you have questions, let's go there.
Oh, right. First of all, thank you so much. That was really, really fantastic. We do have a question in from Jamie. There's an inherent hierarchy in devices in terms of the amount of info they can display. Laptop, tablet, phone, watch. Do you have any tips about how developers should think or plan for this?
That's a great question. It's a really big one. I'll give you a quick overview. The answer is yes, I do have opinions and advice about that. Basically, it boils all the way back through responsive design, all the way to your content, in content hierarchy and creating something I refer to as smart content, which is layout agnostic content in your CMS. That is the key, is having your content very, very flexible. I always picture it and sometimes describe it as your content needs to be mature so it can go out on its own like a college kid, where it's got all sorts of things like, for example, if you have, let's say it's a CMS that has blog posts in it, there should be 3 or 4 different titles for that, not just one title. There should be a long title, a medium title, a short title, and maybe different authors, might be maybe multiple authors, maybe single, but you should have all of this additional information about the content, a lot of extra metadata, so that client developers can decide at runtime, or maybe even on the client, which pieces of that data they pull out and use in the interface. So I'll give you a quick example of that right here, which is that this version of the JSON is for the demo that we did today, and you can see it's got a particular format. And if we look at the real one for the real app, oops, hang on. I have it's much shorter because I have a lot less space. And so I truncated down to just the quick summary that I absolutely absolutely need to know that will definitely fit on the watch face, because I can't scroll around on a watch face. So even the difference between a watch face and a watch app on the Pebble affects your content decisions. So I guess my answer is kind of a long answer. I could talk about it for 2 hours, but it has the most to do with content decisions and having really smart content that allows client developers to pick and choose at runtime.
Thank you. Let's see here. Chris has a question. Are there any open source projects with liberal license for developing wearable apps?
Well, Android Wear, but that's, I don't know how liberal that is, though, actually. I guess not. Geez, Tizen? The thing I'm not sure about is how open any of the projects are. I don't know of one. I think there might not be one. So that's a good question. That's something I'll look into that actually and tweet about it. Great question.
Let's see here. Next question from David. How proprietary are all of the wearable ecosystems? How transferable is this Kilo app to an Android Wear or LG watch?
The code that I wrote for the front end is very proprietary. But the good news is that these applications are not going to be complex. So it's just a teeny bit of view code, basically, and some network requests. So yes, it's proprietary, and yes, I usually don't like that. But it's not really my app. My app is my API. My app is my website. And this is just some front-end client code that accesses the data from that. So it is proprietary, doesn't transfer anywhere, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I don't think there's any way around that. The thing you don't want to do is be writing different back-ends for every different app, like you saw a lot of enterprises do when the iPhone became popular, and they're like, oh, we need a mobile website, and they created an entire department that created their own database that scraped the desktop site and transformed the data, and then now they have 2 websites. So you definitely don't want to do that. You don't want the whole stack to be duplicated, but I'm comfortable with writing a little bit of code like this just to get things onto a watch screen, even though it is proprietary.
Thank you. Let's see. Jason would like to know, do you think there is still a killer app waiting to be created for wearables?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We don't even know what we're doing yet. Absolutely, yes. The sensors that are available on these things and the intimate nature of it being strapped to you opens up a whole world of wild new interactions. I could throw out a couple of ideas. I don't know if this is really the place for it, but I think that there will be something that takes much better use of the vibe motor, so that you can actually, not Morse code, but you can actually get pertinent information from the vibration without even looking, instead of it just going bzzz and you having to look to see what it was. Like my bzzz from my wife for an urgent message should be different. Like I should know before I even look who it is. So I think that is like one, you couldn't really pull that off with a phone because it's not physically touching you. That's one thing. The other big thing that I assume Apple will eventually do, although I don't think they'll release a watch this year, I think that they will put Touch ID on a watch, and then you can identify yourself anywhere by essentially fingerprinting yourself and broadcasting the not your identity, but that you authenticated, that you are who you say you are. That would be ginormous. That would have a huge impact on payments and society at large.
Super. Let's see. Folks, if you do have a question for Jonathan, what he's been talking to you about and showing you, open that group chat widget, type it in, send it in, and he'll answer another one or two while he's still with us. And while we're giving you all one more moment there, I want to let you all know I did also push out in your group chat a couple codes here and URLs to save you some money as a thank you for attending the webcast. Jonathan has some amazing books that can really help with your day-to-day and your projects. One is his Building Android app book, and the other one is the iPhone apps book. You can get the ebooks today for 50% off for attending the webcast, and that's our way, O'Reilly's, of saying thank you for attending the webcast. So you'll want to take advantage of that. As well, Jonathan is going to do another webcast for us on September 18th. He's going to talk about supporting everything, building apps that run everywhere with HTML5, REST, and JSON. You don't want to miss that. So I pushed the link out. You can register for that. It's free, September 18th. Jonathan, I don't see any more questions. Is there anything that you wanted to leave the audience with before we close out today?
I have a question, if I could look at the chat after, which is I'm curious how many people have a smartwatch of one kind or another, and just basically like what they think, like if they're excited about this. I mean, obviously you watch the webinar, so you're curious, but I wonder, if you're excited about it, or if you have anything directly in front of you that you have to do. So I'm just curious for feedback. It's I don't get too much feedback just talking into the microphone. So if anybody wanted to just contribute that in the chat, I will look at it later. I'd be very interested to know.
Super. Folks, we'll leave the group chat up for a while here. Give us your thoughts, your feedback, your comments, as Jonathan put out there for you all. Let us know what you think and what kind of smart apps and watches are you interested in wearing. We'd love to know that, and we can do additional events to get those going for you there. So please give us your thoughts and feedback. All right, we'll leave it up there for a bit here. So Jonathan, with that, we're going to say a really big thank you to you for spending your time with us today and for presenting yet another outstanding event for us and for sharing your knowledge and expertise.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks.
Great. Folks that attended today, we thank you for attending the webcast and hope you've benefited from it. We also thank those of you that got up early or stayed up late because, as usual, we did have people from all over the world on Jonathan's webcast, so we thank you for that. And a big thank you to those of you that sent in questions because having your questions really does add so much to our events, and we appreciate that. Thanks. I see your comments coming in. Again, we'll leave the chat up so you can keep sending those in there for a bit. And we look forward to seeing you on September 18th for Jonathan's next webcast. This will conclude today's event, everyone. Goodbye.